stream of consciousness is over, so we will begin. So hello everyone, welcome to this week's seminar. Hopefully, if you're watching right now, you've realised that the seminar is on Wednesday, not Friday. The reason we've obviously done that is so that it doesn't clash with anything Brayerfest related, because I don't know about you guys, but quite frankly, from like 10, 11, 12, 2 o'clock onwards on Friday, I'm just going to be like Brayerfesting. So hopefully you will have all realised that it's today and you've all tuned in. The title of today's seminar is an introduction to the hobby seminar. So we're going to be going through stuff that if you're quite experienced might seem quite basic, but it's still quite nice to sometimes go over it and have a chat, and you can see some of my models as well, which is always rather lovely. At the end, we're going to have a Q&A session. So if you've got any questions, put them in the little chat thing that will be like either at the bottom if you're on a phone, or at the side if you're on a computer. And I will answer all of your questions at the end. I may not necessarily answer them 100% truthfully or give serious answers if you ask horrible questions, but I will endeavour to answer them as well as possible. So we're going to look at 3 main elements of the hobby today. We're going to start off with basic sort of definitions. So we're going to look at the different finishes of models and talk a little bit about different scales and some of the different brands as well. Then we're going to talk about showing. So we're going to talk about live showing, photo showing and postal showing. And finally, we're going to talk about sort of general other things. So we're going to talk about customizing, tack making and collecting. Now this is going to be a really quick and quite brief sort of run through of the whole of the model horse hobby. If you're new to this, please do watch our other seminars. You can find them all on our YouTube channel, and you can also find them on Facebook. There'll be lots of more in-depth things about particular niches. And as always, you can vote for the next seminar on our website. I can't remember what next week's is, but they're normally held on a Friday. They're held in exactly the same place through Facebook Live. And you can put in suggestions for seminars you want to see. So if there's something you want to learn more about, you can, of course, suggest that. So, without further ado, let's begin. We're going to start off by talking about the different finishes of model horses, and we're going to talk about some of this vocabulary that if you're really new to the hobby, you might find a little bit confusing. So generally speaking, there are 3 main finishes. Those are original finish, so those are models that are produced usually in a factory, they're mass produced. They may be more limited, so you can get, for example, one-of-a-kind Peter Stones are very common. One-of-a-kinds are quite common, doesn't make much sense. But they're painted, they're still classed as original finish. You then get customs, those are ones that have been altered in different ways. And then you get artist resins and chinas. So this is where it gets a bit more complicated, but these tend to be sort of limited runs produced by the artists themselves or outsourced to sometimes to a company to produce them. And they're usually produced in resin, china or pewter. So let's start with original finish. Now the brand that most of you are probably familiar with is of course Breyer, or Breyer if you're in the States. This is an example of a Breyer model. This is Vallegro. Now Breyer produce lots and lots of models. They're definitely the biggest model horse company in the world, and they produce thousands and thousands of different models. If you're new to collecting, it can be a little bit overwhelming seeing all the different models, and sometimes it can be a bit scary seeing the prices they've sold for. The highest selling model horse sold for $22,000, the highest selling Breyer. That is a lot of pennies. It's a lot of pennies. But most of them are pretty reasonably priced. A guy like Vallegro here would have cost you £40 new, and you can get him on the second-hand market for anywhere between £25 and £40 normally. So he's quite a common model. Because he's a common model and there was an unlimited, in theory, amount produced, he's called a regular run. So he's a regularly produced model. He's now retired, so you can't get him anymore, but you'll be able to find him for sale in lots of different places. Now he is a traditional scale model horse, and Breyer produced lots and lots of different scales. The second scale they produce is called classic scale, and you might have seen these, you probably have. So this is another regular run. This model was just produced for 1 year, and it's called Mariah. It's quite a common one in the UK because there were loads and loads produced. We ended up with so many that as a Breyer dealer, I got a load for free and gave them away to everyone. So they're quite a common one. The next scale down that Breyer produce are called stablemates. So these guys are great because they're really tiny and really affordable, and you can get loads of these. Even the really rare ones, you're not going to be looking at spending as much money. You might still be spending over £100, which can seem like a lot, but not as much as for some of the rarer traditionals. This guy is a regular run from a mare and foal set. He is not a mare. Now, the smallest scale Breyer produce are called mini winnies. And this is an example here. This is from one of the little gift sets. These guys are tiny, but they're really, really cute and they're really collectible. So one of the things Breyer have started doing is scaling down their big moulds and producing them in smaller scales. You may have seen the shrinky stablemates. They haven't been released in the UK yet, but you may have seen those. And you've probably seen the shrinky mini winnies. Now these are really, really cool because they're the same as the big ones, but they are going to make things a little bit confusing when you're shopping online. So do make sure to check the scale when you shop, because some of these moulds are available in multiple scales. Another company you may have heard of is Peter Stone. This is a Peter Stone. This is Gary. Gary is a design your own, so that means that I chose what colour he was going to be. So I chose for him to be a black blanket Appaloosa, I chose for him to have a white star, and I paid for him to have stripy hooves, because Appaloosas have stripy hooves. You can also get regularly produced Peter Stones, so they don't really do these anymore. Most of what they produce now are one-of-a-kinds or really limited runs, and they are very, very pricey. These are the more expensive models. Gary here only cost me about $90. Nowadays, for a model like Gary, I'd be looking at more like $200. And some of the stones, you can be looking at $300, $400, $500 plus new. So they're a bit more pricey. But there are lots that are still cheaper. And again, they produce them in 3 scales. So they have this scale, and then they have a scale called Pebbles, which is about the same size as this collector. And they have a scale called Chips, that's about stablemate size. So again, you've got multiple scales. Now, you've probably also heard of Copper Fox. So this is a Copper Fox here. This is one of the Kickstarter models, so one of the first ones produced. This is the Exmoor. Now, Copper Fox model horses were originally a UK-based brand. They are now more of an American-based brand, but there is now a UK dealer. And they originally produced models very, very similar to Breyers and Peter Stones. So your standard run, they were quite limited in production, but sold painted, so they're all the same. So there were other models like Measles out there. Now they're producing more limited runs in sort of blanks or in set colours because they're just sort of restarting back up. So you can get ones that are like yellow or pink, or you can buy the little pewters that went on sale yesterday. So they're a bit different to your Breyer and Stones at the moment, but I'm sure that's going to change in future. So those are 3 major OF brands. There are lots of other brands, and there are also things that aren't made of plastic. All of these guys are plastic. But OF also includes commercial resin in China, like this little Bezic foal here. She's very cute. Now, you've probably seen these in antique shops and places like that. They're really, really common in the UK. So we often class those as commercial resin and China, and that includes everything from Bezic, Royal Doulton, North Light, all of those brands. So all of those kind of things that you would see like on your grandmother's shelf. Those are the kind of things we class as commercial resin and China. So they're OFs as well. Now, I'm going to talk about CTF a little bit later. So although CTF are still technically OF, we're going to talk about them later. So let's move on to customs now. So if I show you Vallegro here, he is your traditional Breyer, regular run. Now what people can do is they can take a model like Vallegro here and they can repaint or resculpt him, and that will make a custom. So some customs are really simple repaints. So let's have a look at one of those. This guy here is Utopia. So he's based on another Colhester's horses that I actually prefer to Vallegro, but don't tell anyone that. And so I liked using the mould, and as you can see, he's been repainted. So an artist, in this case Deb Brown, has taken that Vallegro model and they've looked at my reference pictures and they've repainted him. So you can see he's got a lot more detail than the Breyer OF. So if you look at the hooves, they're a lot more detailed. He's got beautiful like custom painted shoes. His colour's got a lot more depth. Obviously this guy's quite a simple colour because he's black, but he's still got lots and lots of depth in his colour and he's beautifully painted. Artists can also resculpt and remodel. Now this is a more basic resculpt. You'll see some that don't look anything like the original, but this is a beautiful custom Vallejo by Heather. And as you can see, he's had his mane completely redone. So if you compare his mane and tail, they've obviously looked really, really different. And this is where we start talking about extreme or drastic customs. You can even take the mane and tail off and create beautiful mohair mane and tails. I haven't got one of those in front of me, but they look really, really lush. Now, customs show in a completely different division, and you can customise pretty much any model horse. If you want to get started in customising, all you need to do is grab a paintbrush and get painting. It's as simple as that. Once you're making it a bit more advanced, then you'll start having to look at prepping them properly and different techniques to make them really realistic. But the wonderful thing with customs is there is no limit. So you'll see some amazing ones out there. Now the next section I'm going to talk about, you'll see quite a lot, called artist resin and chinas. Now this is where we start going up in the price. If you think of OF at the bottom of our price hike, artist resin and chinas were starting to go up. Artist resins are produced in more limited runs. Usually you buy them direct off the artist, although there are some exceptions. So this here is a resin known as Fritz. So he's produced in resin and he was sold blank. And then I painted him myself. You can obviously get someone else to paint him. So he's essentially got a custom paint job, but because of the way he's produced and because he was produced in a limited run, we class him as an artist resin. Artist resins are available in every scale imaginable and every breed and type of horse you could ever want. But they are more pricey and they are limited, so they can be much, much harder to find. They also don't have to be resin. They can be china. Artist chinas are very expensive, but very, very beautiful. And they can be pewter. So if I show you these two little guys, this is Achilles and Patroclus. They can't be separated, they're in love. And they're both sculpted by the same artist. So this little guy, Achilles, he is a resin, so he's nice and light. And then Patroclus here is a pewter. So he's a lot heavier. You can definitely, if you could feel through the internet, you could feel his weight. But again, he's just been sculpted by an artist and it just happens that he's been cast in pewter. So I've painted both of these myself, but again, I could have got someone else to paint them. Now, you might also start hearing about animal artistries. Now, animal artistries are produced in resin and china, and they are sold both blank and they are sold also painted. You can have them custom painted to your own colour, like this one here, or you can have buy them in runs. So there are runs of like 1 of 25 or 1 of 100 or 1 of 500 on a particular colour. Or you can buy them that are sort of, in a sense, one-off paint jobs, but quite often they might be repeated. So there's a retail therapy each month where you can buy those. So this is Katrina, and she was one of my wedding cake toppers, hence the name, and she's an animal artistry Venus. Now, so she is made of china, so you can see that she's got a slightly glossy finish, and she's a bit more fragile. Now, you can just paint these yourself as well. So this is an example of another china animal artistry, and this is cold painted. So it hasn't been fired or anything like that. And I've happily just painted little Loki here myself. So you don't have to have them painted animal artistry. You can buy them blank and paint them yourself if you're able to paint, or pay for someone else to paint them for you. So that is artist resin and china as a quick whip through. And we'll now move on to CTF. So I'm going to have a little bit of tea quickly and I will check to see if there are any obvious questions. Marion, I wasn't actually asking the question because of this seminar. I was just asking the question because someone else asked me the question and I didn't know the answer. So I thought I would just ask the question to other people. That's why I asked the question. Yeah. Thankfully, I don't think I'll be running a show this year, so I'll just let everyone else deal with it and my show won't be till like ages after and other people. It's fine, it's not my problem. Okay, so let's talk about CTF. CTF stands for Craft Toy Foundation, and it's a section you'll find exclusive in the UK. Models can be both original finish and to some extent custom made or one of a kind, depending on how they're produced. The biggest thing you're going to find in CTF are your commercially produced toy brands. So that is things like Schleich, Collector, Safari, Papo and your Brea Mini Winnies. So you probably, if you're new to collecting, have got one of these. It's a Schleich. We've all got them. They're really, really common. They're cheap. They're easy to get hold of. This is the Morgan Mare. I actually quite like this one. I think she's quite pretty. Now, these tend to be less realistic than your Brea models. And they also tend to be quite easily rubbed. If you've been into a toy shop and you've looked through the Schleich, you'll find that they quite often do have rubs. And I can tell you as a dealer, basically when we get Schleich and Collector come in, you get like a massive box and they're all loose inside it. So even when you're buying online, they've been stored and they've been shipped so badly that they will probably have rubs. So the condition tends to be not as good. Now these guys can be customised. You can custom paint them. You can resculpt them. They're a bit harder to resculpt because the plastic is really hard. So they're solid plastic, but they're also great toys. So they're quite good for young kids. Collector are a really similar brand. They come in three sizes. Apologies. This is the standard size that you'll see. So this is the Mangalaga Marcador, and you'll see this one quite commonly. This is quite a common one to find at shows from a few years ago. And again, they're solid plastics. They're a bit more bendy than Schleich. So some of them you've got their legs bending quite a lot. But you get bigger ones and you get little mini shrinky ones as well. So again, watch out when you're buying online because shrinky versions make things a bit difficult. Now Brea also produce a CTF brand. So in the States, they just go in OF. In the UK, we put them as CTF. So these little mini Winnies. So generally they go in CTF because it's the same sort of issues. Condition, you know, they're often rubbed, they're not as well painted, all that kind of stuff. But some of the moulds are genuinely really, really nice. The shrinky moulds, the new ones, are absolutely lovely, but this is one of the older moulds that I think is one of my personal favourites. This is Angelo. Angelo has had several top 10s at BMX, and a little guy just like this once got a champion at BMX. So they can do really, really well, and they only cost a few pounds, so great if you're into showing. CTF also includes models that are made out of latex, and the three big brands you're going to see are Juleps, Aquariums and Rubbernets. So there are two types of Juleps. There are the Horse of the Year that are made of like solid plastic, and then there are the Julep Originals that are latex. So Serena here is a Julep Original, and if you look, I can do this with her legsies. Or this. Oh, Serena, you have a broken leg. Or this. So they're really flexible, and the great thing about that is that obviously you can pose them however you want, and they're really, really good for performance. They're really collectible, these ones. So again, you can buy them, as it stands, you can buy them either sort of ready-made, in ready-made colours, or you can have them custom painted to your requirements. There used to be something called catalogue originals. So if you follow Chestnut Ridge and you see Crackers a lot, Crackers is a catalogue original. So that means that there were lots produced that look like him. Aquariums are really, really similar. Now these come in lots of different sizes. This is one of the foundation ones. This is a Fjord. So their prices, particularly for the larger ones, the newer ones, are much higher, but they're exactly the same. They're made of solid latex and they can still be bent, just like Juleps can. Now with all latex models, you don't want to bend them around too much because you want to try and preserve them. And the problem with latex models is they do degrade. Rubbernets are a slightly newer brand, and these are produced by the same company that produce Animal Artistries. They're also made of latex, so you can bend them, but they're less bendy than the others, and because they're a bit more pricey, you're probably less likely to be posing them in cute poses for getting them to eat cake and stuff for like fun photos, and you might want to preserve them. So this guy here is my best show horse that I own, so I'm not going to manipulate him around too much. Again, they come in two sizes. This is the smaller size, and then they have a 1/12 size that's about the same size as Juleps. Oh, 3 sizes. I'm not doing well with remembering things. And they also do a big rearing one that is like this big. He's in the cabinet down there. We're not getting him out. But CTF also includes all other toys. So your little My Little Ponies, like this pretty one here. How pretty is this My Little Pony? They'd go in CTF. And any other toys like Grand Champion champions and stuff like that, they go in CTF and they can do really, really well. It also includes anything that's handmade. So this guy here is a needle felted horse. Now most needle felted horses are not going to be as big as Bubba here. Bubba is definitely an exception. This is made literally by getting bits of felt and poking them, and then you make it solid and you make your shape and you've got a Bubba. So these will go in CTF as well. So that includes things made of Fimo and of felt, and I suppose if you carved a horse out of wood, he'd go in CTF as well. So that is more your craft type models. So that is a sort of whirlwind tour of the different finishes, and we've also talked a little bit about the different scales as well. So I'm going to check comments. Teresa is desperate to steal Bubba, but it's not going to happen because he's mine. So we're now going to talk a little bit about showing. There are three main types of showing: live shows, photo shows, and postal shows. It feels really weird right now to be talking to you about live showing because obviously that isn't happening because of COVID-19, and so we can't go and meet each other, but I'm still going to talk about it so you know, come next year, it will all be wonderful and we'll all be at live shows and it's going to be brilliant and you won't need to worry. So live showing is when you go and you show your model horses in person. So you place them all around the ring, so placing them all round your ring in a little circle. I don't know why you'd have both of these in the same class. And then you might have like this one. Beautiful, look at this, such a competitive class. And then, oh dearie me, Albert. And then you'd put your breed in front, and then I as a judge would come along and I'd inspect them in detail. And I'm looking for confirmation. I'm looking for biomechanics. So does it actually make sense, or are their legs in weird places? If, for example, this horse here was in the ring and his leg was like that, I might be like, oh, hello, that looks a bit dodgy. Or out like that. Oh dear, I think Serena needs to see a vet. I'm going to also be looking for condition. So I want to see, do they have rubs or marks? I'm going to be looking at breed standard. So does Albert here look like a Trakehner? Am I going to mark him down because his tail is really, really long and he's supposed to be a sport horse, for example? Probably not, because I'll have a little bit of an allowance for tail lengths when it comes to bendy CTF, but you might. I might also be judging things that aren't breed. So when we judge breed classes, we're looking for breed. So Utopia here, for example, is a KWPN. Caspian here is an Arab. Those are his breed. I might also have a section called performance. And we're going to talk about this a bit more when we talk about tack making. But performance is where we show horses in tack. And in the UK, they also have to have riders or handlers. So this guy here would be a circus entry. So he has a doll that goes with him and like a little base and a whip as well. And he's obviously got his tack on him. When I'm judging him, I'm going to be looking more at the tack. So does the tack fit, for example? Is the tack correct for what the discipline is? So for example, at a higher level dressage, you've got requirements that you have to use a double bridle in certain classes. Things like that are really, really important. I'm going to be looking at the position of the doll, the overall appearance, the realism. All of those kind of things are going to be taken into account when I'm judging performance. So breed, no tack or handlers. Performance, tack or handlers. I might also have workmanship classes, and that is for custom and artist resin models, and I'm judging it on the quality of the finish. So Utopia here is my best workmanship horse. So when I'm judging him, I'm going to be looking at, okay, is it just being sprayed black, or is there more subtlety to the coat, the different tones? Does it have ginger coming through? Bearing in mind, for a breed like this, it's probably going to have quite a fine coat, or at least be clipped because it's a performance horse. So that might be something I want to take into account. So it's going to be showing more of those ginger tones on a black. I'm going to look at the hooves in particular and the eyes, so those details. If I'm judging Appaloosa, I'm going to be looking at spotty bums, quite frankly. You know, do they have striped hooves? Do they have mottling? Do they have white sclera? I can't speak today. We'll just not even attempt that. If I've got a re-sculpt, like Champagne here, I'm going to be looking at the quality of the re-sculpting. I'm going to be looking at the realism of the colour. So a champagne quite often does have reverse dappling. We're going to look at those eyes in particular on a champagne. Champagne horses have different coloured eyes. If it had standard coloured eyes, I'd mark it down if I was judging a champagne. So things like that are all going to come into account when we look at workmanship. And condition, again, really, really important. You don't want any rubs or marks. You might also have collectability, and I'm going to talk more about sort of collecting later. But in collectability, horses are judged on how rare they are, basically. Condition is also really, really important. So you think if I'm buying a model horse to add to my collection, I want it to be in really, really good condition. And obviously condition can be weighed up against age and against the model itself. So this guy, for example, is, I think there are about 5 of these that we know about. It's a variation of a Brearfast Special Run. I love this boy. So he's quite a rare model, so he might do quite well in collectability. Equally, a good condition Rydal could do quite well because these degrade over time. And so having one that's in really nice condition, and this is actually quite a good condition one, even if he doesn't look it, is actually really, really good for collectability. The same for China's breaks, they become rarer over time. You don't really see collectability in the UK as much as you do in the States. And in the States, quite often in breed classes, they'll be both judged for breed and collectability. So bear that in mind if you're not in the UK. Okay. So when I go to a live show, I turn up, I put my horses in the ring, might have an Arab class, might have a thoroughbred class. There'll usually be a raffle at lunch, but there'll also be loads of other people for you to talk to and lots of shopping. So when things get a bit better and we are actually able to go to shows, so thinking now forward all the way until next year, you might want to look at attending your first live show if you haven't already, because they're really, really good fun and people are really friendly generally. There are a few who aren't, and I'm sorry, I apologise for those people. But generally speaking, people are really friendly and they really want you to enjoy this hobby. And for many of us, our live shows are like escape from real life and they are such good fun. But if you can't get to a live show because of something like, oh, I don't know, a global pandemic, then you might want to look at photo showing. Now, photo showing is pretty obvious. What you are showing is a photograph of your model. So instead of taking these guys to a show, I'd instead send off a little postcard or actual photograph. These are postcards, but they were the best I had. So I can pick how I want to photograph my model. Some people like to use a plain background. So this is a photo of Mystic here, and he's got a nice plain background. This same photo did really, really well in a photo show recently, and you can see it's got really nice contrast. That really helps. You could choose like a realistic finish and background. So Kanga here has got more of a little realistic finish, so it's like nice and green. Or you could go outside and photograph them outside. So here's a picture of Daisy hanging out in the snow, which is quite nice. So basically you photograph your model horse and then you send off the photo. Now it's quite rare nowadays to have printed photos. Most of the photo shows are on things like Facebook and they're usually free to enter. So all you do is you go online, join the Facebook group, and when the show opens, you just upload your pictures into the relevant albums. Sometimes you might have to pay, sometimes you might have to email photographs or upload them on something like SmugMug or things like that. But generally speaking, really, really easy to do. There are loads of free photo shows out there, and you don't need any fancy backdrops or light boxes or anything like that to start. If you've got a plain bit of white wall and maybe just put a plain footing down, you could use a bed sheet, something like that. Or if you're lucky enough to have a garden that's got like nice views and you can take your horse out and you don't have sort of a fence or something horrible like that behind, then those are really good places to take a photograph. Your horse is going to be judged similarly to how they're judged at a live show, but obviously if you've got a horse like this one who looks stunning on this side but has a massive scratch down that side, at a live show they won't do very well, but in a photo show no one knows it's got a scratch on the other side, and that's a fun thing about photo shows. So they're still going to be looking at breed, they're still going to be looking at condition, for performance they're still going to be looking at the fit of the tack and things like that, but obviously they're looking at it in the context of a photograph. For some shows, the quality of photography will also be important. The quality of photography is always important in terms of showing off your model. If your photograph is really blurry or you know, you can't really see the horse, or the horse is at a really bad angle, it's not going to place as highly as if you've just taken a really plain, nice, clear photo. So having your photo in focus and the horse square onto the camera, so like these guys are square on, you can see the whole side, you're more likely to do better in a photo show. The final type of shows are postal shows. Now again, these aren't usually held by post anymore, they tend to be online. They're a bit rarer, but they do still happen, and they're really, really good fun to enter. So postal shows are basically luck. Some are a bit more detailed, so the model horse racing one, for example, you've got to be able to analyse form and things like that. So if you're into racing, go and check that out, and it's really good fun. It's also a lot of work, so I don't necessarily recommend if you're busy. Most of them, however, are just luck. So they'll have a list of classes. So it could be, for example, we used to do a 3-day eventing one. So we had like CCI 1 star, CCI 2 star, that kind of thing. You send in your horse's details, and then they will use some form of random method to pick your horse. So they could use putting paper in a hat and literally picking names out and do 1st to 6th. For like, for my 3-day eventing show, what I did was gave people like dressage scores. So I used like a random number generator, and it sort of became quite nuanced towards the end, but that gave me dressage scores. They might use an online randomizer, they might get their cat to pick, it doesn't really matter. But basically it's luck. You might have to pay a small entry fee to cover your prizes, but it's a really good way of getting into showing. And the great thing is that it doesn't matter what your horse looks like. It could be the ugliest creature ever, and it could look disabled, it could be missing a leg. It doesn't matter. No one needs to see your horse, so this is a really good form of showing if your models are a bit dodgy. Not naming any names on this table, obviously. Now, when you're entering shows, you can win some pretty awesome prizes. You can win more model horses, great. You can also win things like trophies. So Ahote here actually won this trophy. It says Reserve Champion. He won it at Glitz and Glamour Live because he won Collectability, and then he got Reserve. You can win rosettes. I was going to show you a massive rosette, but it was like too pinned in. So I just brought you this one. This is one of my more recent ones. Mr. Darcy won this one, just in case you're curious. Very, very proud of Mr. Darcy. So you can win rosettes. You might win things like cookies or medallions. So Schmexy got this medallion at BMX. You'll often see people refer to things like Nan cookies, and this is basically what they're talking about. This is what they call these medallions you get for doing really well. And you could also win busts. So I've got tons of these little AA busts. Absolutely beautiful. I think this one was from BMX last year. Really, really nice. Absolutely lush little things. And you can win odd stuff. You can win cuddly toys, teapots. Particularly if you're at my shows, I do warn you, I give odd prizes. But you can win all kinds of really fun stuff. And so that's quite a nice part of showing, is that you can get some prizes. And it's really nice displaying all your rosettes and trophies, and then people come in your house and they go, "Ooh, what do you win all these rosettes for?" And you're like, "Oh, they're for the model horses." And they look at you like you're completely insane. But that's fine. That's okay. People can think we're insane. I have no objection to that. So that's really, really nice. You might also, if you're at a live show, qualify your horse for a qualifier show. So in the UK, that's called BMX, and you'll get a little green ticket, and your horse can go to like the show of shows. And that means that if he wins there, he's like the best in the country, which is pretty cool. He could also qualify for NAN in the States. Then you could go over to America and show there. If you're in Australia, they have their own ones called Down Under Nationals or Done. So you could also do that in the States. So that's always a really, really fun thing to do. In the UK, we hold BMX on the last weekend of September. And we all go and get very, very drunk and eat Pizza Hut. So I highly recommend it. So showing is a really fun way of using your model horses, and you don't have to go to live shows. You can do it online. You don't even have to photograph. You can just send in names and win prizes. So it's really, really good fun. So we're going to move on. I'm going to need some more tea, and then we're going to talk about the final 3 things, which are customizing, tack making and collecting. So So before we start, a reminder that we're doing a Q&A at the end. So you can start putting your questions in the little question things and I will answer them. So any question you want, it doesn't matter. Okay, so one of the things you might want to start doing with your model horses is customizing them. And that basically means you take an OF model and then you repaint it. You can also sculpt it or add a mane and tail. And you can have so much fun with customizing. So this is a Brea Hackney. I've added this lovely little unicorn horn, and then I've airbrushed him to this sort of blue, pink and purple colour. I've then covered him in airbrush shimmer, so he shimmers and he's all pearlescent. And I've added like cute details like metallic hooves and eyes, and they've added this sort of white painting detail as well. So that is quite a fun form of customizing, is creating what we call decorators or fantasy models. So that is a really fun thing to do if you want to be creative. Obviously, of course, you don't have to be creative. You can be boring and paint realistic colours, like little Achilles here. But I've added a little bit of fancy because I've given him a cute purple base and I put a little bit of purple in his tail so he looks squishy. So all I do when I paint a model like this is I don't use any airbrushing. You can use pastels, so little dry water-based pastels to add that sort of shading. So he's got a little bit of pink, a little bit of black. And then I can just use a paintbrush and some black paint and I can look at a picture of an Appaloosa model horse and I can paint him. And there we go. It's as simple as that. Now, the more sort of complex the paint job, the more skills you might need to be to pull it off. But you can do fun, unusual things. So Patroclus here has bendoir spots, which is quite fun. Obviously, little Loki here, he's got this really cute mane. Now that's how he came to me, but that's quite a fun little addition. So although he's a realistic colour, maybe, you know, if I had an OF fjord, I could take the mane off and do this sort of cute love heart little thing. That's quite a sweet little thing to do. So you can have real fun with your customising, even if you're doing realistic colours. And you can start off really, really small. So you can start off maybe just by adding some white markings to an OF, stuff like that. Or you can just dive right in and get painting. It's Brea Fest weekend. Brea are going to have loads of online seminars and tutorials. So grab some paints and go and follow some of those. And I'm sure you'll have great fun creating your first ever custom. Customising is so much fun. You might also, I think the cat's been in my tea. Every time I take a mouthful of tea, I get like fur. It's horrible. You might also want to have a go at tack making. So this is one of the tack sets I made 4 years ago now. So it's pretty simple to make this actually, not that complex at all. So this is leather. I know I'm not that horse. So this is leather. So I use kangaroo leather lace, which I get from Australia. These are just little like gems that I've glued on. This is a cast pewter bit. So I get these from Rio Rondo. Feathers, just like craft store feathers, and then they've been attached with embroidery thread. Again, I bought the hooks from a specialist supplier, stick-on gems. This is just standard leather, so you can see it very well because of the feathers. And then again, I've just stuck on the gems. I made the tassels out of embroidery thread. That's just like a little jewellery making gem. Bit of felt underneath, more feathers. This is again kangaroo leather lace. And the buckles, again, are sort of special made buckles that you get from Rio Rondo or from Chestnut Ridge. So really actually quite easy to make. It was a bit time consuming. I'm just going to cough a second. Give me a second. Apologies. I have really bad hay fever. So quite time consuming to make, but it didn't take too long. I think it took me a couple of days. And you'll need to buy sticky wax so that your bit actually stays in your mouth. The problem with this set, it sticks better that side, is because for realism there has to be so much tension on the side reins, his bit tends to fall out of his mouth, which is a complete pain. And if you have a look at this set here, I didn't make this set, but again, someone has just used a bit of leather lace and specialist supplies. These are just jump rings, and he's actually got a proper like bit going into his mouth. And they've created this beautiful stallion harness, which I absolutely love. So you can have real fun with tack making. You can start off, Baba, stand up. It's not having it today. You can start off by having a go at making maybe some head collars. If you've got some nylon thread, you could have a go at tying like a little rope halter like Gary's got. And then you could move on to maybe more complex things like bridles, and then finally on things like saddles, full circus costumes, anything you want. Tag making is great because you can just create like whatever your imagination wants you to create. You can look at really cool things online and then recreate them in miniature. And then you can move on to creating tiny, tiny miniature scenes, which is also one of my favourite things to do. It's really time consuming and usually ends up with me super gluing myself to something, but it's so much fun. I've even made little shops, little tiny mini model horse shows and everything. I love it. So tag making is a really, really fun thing to get into. And you can make your horses whatever you want, and then you can also go and start performance showing. Now the final bit of model horsing, I suppose, that we all do is collecting. Even if you've only got a few models, you're technically already a collector. Now when it comes to collecting, it's not just about hoarding. I know that sometimes it feels like it is. And trust me, I'm looking at a camera that is in front of 5 shelves that go the length of the room and are double layered with model horses. In this room alone, there are over 2,000 model horses. And that is even with there being about 20 in a box downstairs. It's quite shocking. But it isn't just about hoarding. Collecting is quite nuanced. You also want to start thinking about how rare things are. Are they really worth what you're paying them? What do you really want to add to your collection? If we're looking at this weekend, for example, do you want to buy all of the Brea Fair special runs and all of the store specials and then a load of OF Breas? Or do you want to head over to Brea's eBay account and possibly rehome one of the one-of-a-kind auction models? You'd probably be spending more on the one-of-a-kind auction model, but maybe that's where you want to start adding to your collection. You can also start looking for rarity. So for example, if you were at a sale or a live show and you saw this guy, if you're a proper collector, you'd go, oh, that's interesting. That one doesn't look like the rest of them. So he should have a eye ring here. And then some of them are also they have the eye ring, but they're missing this, I was going to say paw print. It's not a paw print, hand print. So once you start collecting, you start to be able to spot things like that are a bit different. And that's what you're really looking for. You're looking for variation. Now, variation doesn't necessarily mean that Brea have deliberately produced that model with a variation. I've got a paddock pal that's missing a blaze, and I have yet to find anyone who has that model without the blaze. It has no white on its face whatsoever, and there's no masking that needs removing. He's clearly gone through the factory, someone has forgotten to do that bit of his paint job or forgotten to put the masking on, and he's left the factory. He didn't pass their quality control. So he didn't get hit by quality control when he probably should have done. So things like that are what you're really looking for when you start collecting. And maybe you also want to start to fine tune your collection. So maybe you go, actually, I don't really want OFs, I only want customs, or I really, really love tulips, so I'm just going to get tulips. Or I really love bays, so I'm just going to get bays. Or I love Arabs, so I'm just going to get Arabs. Maybe you're really into showing and actually the sort of collectability thing doesn't really bother you. What you want are horses that will do well at shows. And so actually your collection ends up being more of a focus as to how well they show, not how rare they are. So it's really about finding yourself as a collector. There is nothing wrong, incidentally, with the hoarding part. There is nothing wrong with just buying horses because you like them, or because you want them, or because they were free, or they were cheap. I got a Brea Fair special run for $20 the other day. It's an absolute bargain. We won't talk about the other thing that I bought that meant she agreed to sell the other one for only an extra $20, but that's okay. We don't need to talk about the amount we spend on the model horses. So collecting is really, really good fun, and sometimes it's just nice to sit wherever you've got your collection. Just look at them. I'm really lucky that obviously, you know, I haven't got children, so I can devote a whole room of my house to model horses. Highly recommend not having children, it's really helpful. But sometimes just looking at them is really, really nice, and of course you can then think about showing them, and that's really lovely, as it's a way to really show off your beautiful collection. And that's all I wanted to say for today. So we're going to have a Q&A now. So if you have any questions, they can be as ridiculous as you like. Put them in the little chat thing and I will go through and I will respond to each and every one of them. So let's have a look through. Fighting over Bubba, that's absolutely fine. I'm just going to ignore that. Marion, I actually knew that someone was going to ask that question. I still think they should go in custom, personally, but I honestly don't know. I think if they didn't produce those stupid artist resin ones, it would be nice and easy and it wouldn't be complicated. But it's very confusing and I don't really know. And I think I should just put a vote up, or I should just like sell mine and just not bother showing them or something. I do actually, and this is my pro tip for showing, sometimes if stuff is too difficult and I don't know where to put it, I just don't show it instead of like starting an argument. It's fine, there'll be another show. I do that quite a lot when I'm entering American shows because I can never remember, because their rules are different to ours. I can never remember where I have to put stuff, so I just like don't enter stuff if it's too difficult. But then I'm lazy, so I don't know, Marion. I think probably custom. Yes, that's what I'm going to say. Does anyone else have any more questions, or is this going to be the shortest Q&A in history? You normally ask more questions than this. It's really hard because there's a buffer. Marion just thinks it's funny. Great, thanks Marion. I love that you think my suffering is funny. I really do suffer. Different coloured BMX tickets. Marion, would you like to know what the different coloured BMX tickets stand for? So green BMX tickets are for breed, yellow BMX tickets are for performance, and blue BMX tickets are for workmanship. And that just makes things a little bit easier for the BMX team. Tickets makes it easier for me when I've got to sort through an entire 3 years. Oh God, next year it's going to be 4 years. Okay, we won't even think about that. 4 years worth of tickets. And it makes it easier for show holders like me when they're trying to sort them out and make sure they're in the right class and stuff. So there are 3 different colours: green, yellow and blue. And that will depend what section your horse has qualified into. Any more questions? I feel like this has been quite a short seminar. I thought it was going to be quite long. Maybe I just powered through. Is there anything anyone else wants me to talk about or anything like that? Otherwise we'll sign off and I'll do my finishing things. Okay, so I'll give you a couple of moments if you do have another question or comment you want to put through, and I will do my closing announcements. I'm doing the announcements at the end. So a reminder that tomorrow at 7 p.m. British Standard Time, that's 7 o'clock if you live in the UK, other times if you live in other countries, we are doing a hobby social via Zoom. If you haven't already got the login details, drop me a message and I will send you the login details. Over 18s only, alcohol encouraged. We will be bullying Emma for at least 45 minutes. So please bring your proper Bully Emma hats. And pets are more than welcome. I wish to see everyone's pets. So definitely, if you haven't signed up for that, get involved. It'll be really nice to just chat to each other and see each other, because we haven't really seen each other in so long. Friday at 7 to 10 o'clock are my auctions. So go onto the website, make sure you register. It's really important you register or you can't bid. Have a look at the lots that are there, and from 7 p.m. British Standard Time to 10 p.m. British Standard Time, so that's 3 hours, you could go on and you can bid. Obviously that does clash a tiny bit with the Brayerfest stuff, which is why we've tried to make it as long as possible, so you've got plenty of time to get those bids in. I don't know how much last minute bidding there'll be, and if it clashes with other stuff, I'm really sorry. I try my hardest. Tried not to put any of the live things that clash with Brayerfest. Yeah, so those are my following announcements. Make sure you check out our competitions each day. Lots of really, really fun competitions. Today's you can win... What can you win today? Honestly, can't remember what you can win today. But you can win it, whatever it is, by guessing the 3 breeds that make up a part bred horse. If you go onto our Instagram, you can win some blind bags. All you have to do is like answer a question. It's not that difficult, it's complete luck. We've got lots of competitions and winning stuff for the rest of the week. My favourite is you've got to guess what's in a mini Winnie blind bag. I can't remember which day that is, but I'm going to do an actual Facebook Live of me opening the mini Winnie blind bag to see if you're all right. And the reason I love this is because the mini Winnie blind bag isn't the prize. I get to keep the mini Winnie. So whatever mini Winnie it is, it's mine. So that's quite a fun one. And go buy stuff off the website is what my other announcement, because I need money for Brewfest. Let's have a look and see if there are any other questions. Do you think a collectability show would be possible in the UK? So I ran Collectability 10 years ago? No, not 10 years. My first show was 10 years ago. It was less than 10 years ago. 2014? 2013, finished there, 2014. 2013, 7 years ago. Whew, it's a long time. My brain's obviously not functioning. Like not massively so, and it was part of a bigger show. I definitely would like to see more collectability. This weekend, or last weekend, I judged for Breakables live, obviously not live, photo show, and I was judging collectability as well as breed, and I really enjoyed it. It'd be really nice to see it in the UK. I think the problem is going to be experienced judges and showers. But it's definitely something that I think maybe next year, I had thought about next year doing like a workmanship and collectability live, if people were into that. Because I know people really liked the idea of doing like a pure workmanship live. But I thought if we put collectability as well, then people who don't have customs, who just have like OFs and stuff, could bring that along. Obviously collectability in the UK doesn't BMX qualify. In the US it NAN qualifies. So there's a problem there, and I think that's probably why it's not as popular, is because obviously a horse doesn't qualify for anything, but in the States it would qualify for NAN. But at the same time in the UK you can qualify fantasy for breed, but you can't qualify fantasy. You can't do that in the US. It only works for workmanship and collectability. So, you know, swings and roundabouts. But I think it would be really good if there's a demand for it, and if I can get enough people to come, and maybe if we sort of start off by making it part of another show, it would be really, really cool to have, because I think collectability is something that obviously I'm really passionate about. I'm a collector first and foremost. I'm not a shower, I'm a collector, and I've got some beautiful rare pieces in my collection that are not show horses. So this variation of Hote, for example, he's not going to place in a breed class, but he should place in a collectability class depending on what else is on the table. I've got my volunteer model, for example, this year will arrive at some point in like 8 months' time or something. And I don't know what that's going to be. It might not be a show horse. I've got Brewfest prize models. I've got other Brewfest volunteer models. So I've got models that are rarer, and it'd be really, really nice to bring them out. And it'd be really nice to see what other people have as well, because I'm sure I'm not the only one that's got rarer things in their collection that are just not show horses. And I think the fact that we don't have collectability in the UK also sometimes makes me second guess spending so much on a horse that I know won't show well, because then I'm thinking, well, what is the point in having this, because the only person who sees it is me, and I actually want to be able to take it out and show people and be like, look at this gorgeous horse. So yeah, I'm totally pro collectability. I think we should have more collectability. And we could have collectability CTF. So like little rydles and stuff. It would be really cool. So, but yeah, it depends on judges. It depends on entrants. But if people want it, tell me, and I can definitely look at doing some form of live show where I put it in. It may be a complete failure, but you know, my haul is quite cheap, so I'll just do it in my cheap haul. It'll be fine. Emma's been on her best behaviour. If this is your best behaviour, Emma, I don't want to know what your not good behaviour is. You have been on your best behaviour, thank you. I'm very, very proud, and you were very well behaved on Monday, and well done everyone. We can clap because Emma did very, very well in the quiz. She also just says mini winnies. You can win some mini winnies one day, so, you know, check that out. And Teresa wants to give Emma a hug for being on her best behaviour. So I think that's all of our questions and answers. I've just ranted about collectability for ages, not uncommon for me. So hopefully I will see you all next week for whatever next week's seminar is. Remember, it will be back on Friday. Can't remember what it is. I will amend the website tomorrow with the amended seminars. So please go and vote for the next seminar on the website. I have added the drama llama option, but I've called it having a hobby detox. So it's not just going to be, I'm not going to say the word I was going to say, moaning about people. It's not going to be about that. Sort of is, but it sort of isn't. So I've added that option, and don't give in to peer pressure, is what I would say. So yeah, go vote and make a suggestion as to what you want for a seminar. We've got another judging one coming up and lots and lots of fun things. So I will see you all soon. I hope you enjoyed the seminar. Tis goodbye from me. Tis goodbye from this incredibly messy table that I now have to clear up. And I will see you soon. Bye-bye. Where is... Oh, hello. There it is.